A cold wind howled through the empty streets, carrying the scent of rain and despair. Underneath an old, rusted dumpster, curled up in a trembling ball of fur, lay a golden retriever, his ribs pressing against his fragile skin, his eyes dull and lifeless. He had once belonged to someone. Once had a name. But now, he was just another forgotten soul in a world that had no room for him. His stomach clenched in painful hunger, a feeling he had grown used to. Days had passed since his last meal, and his once golden coat was now matted and covered in grime. The city moved on without him. People walked by, some noticing his frail frame but doing nothing, while others didn't even spare a glance. He had stopped hoping for kindness long ago. But then, someone stopped. A child, no older than 7, with eyes full of curiosity and something rare, compassion. The boy stood just a few feet away, wearing a red raincoat that made him look like a flicker of warmth in the cold, gray afternoon. He clutched a piece of bread in his tiny hands, staring at the dog with a mixture of fascination and sadness. What happened next would change everything. The boy hesitated, looking around as if expecting someone to stop him. Strangers passed by, indifferent to the silent exchange between the two. The dog, too weak to move, merely watched, his sunken eyes barely reflecting the world around him. Then, slowly, the boy knelt down and extended the piece of bread. It was small, barely enough to curb the dog's hunger, but it was more than he had received in days. The golden retriever flinched at first. Human hands had not been kind to him before. But there was something different about this child. His movements were gentle, his voice soft as he whispered, "Here, you can have it." Hesitantly, the dog stretched his neck forward and sniffed the bread. It smelled of warmth, of something distant and familiar. His stomach twisted in agony, reminding him that he needed to eat. With a trembling jaw, he took the piece of bread from the child's fingers, chewing slowly, savoring the taste of kindness more than the food itself. The boy watched in silence, a small smile forming on his lips. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another piece of bread, placing it on the ground beside the dog. Then, without another word, he sat down on the damp pavement, crossing his legs, as if to say, "I'll stay with you for a while." The golden retriever didn't understand why. He had been abandoned, discarded like trash. Yet, here was a child who didn't walk away. Here was someone who saw him. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something stir in his chest. Hope. The boy kept returning every day. With each visit, he brought food, sometimes bread, sometimes scraps from his own meals. But more than that, he brought companionship. He would talk to the dog, telling him stories about school, about his parents, about the imaginary worlds he created in his mind. The golden retriever didn't understand the words, but he understood the warmth in the boy's voice, the way he would reach out his small hands and gently stroke his fur, careful not to startle him. Days turned into weeks. The dog, once too weak to stand, began to find his strength again. His coat, though still dirty, started to regain some of its golden hue. His eyes, once hollow, now held a flicker of life. But then, something changed. One evening, the boy didn't come. The dog waited, his ears perked at every passing footstep. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows against the pavement. The night air grew colder, but the boy never arrived. For the first time in weeks, the golden retriever felt the familiar pang of loneliness return. He curled up beneath the dumpster, his body aching, not just from hunger, but from the absence of the only friend he had left. The next morning, he forced himself to stand. His legs wobbled, but he pushed forward, sniffing the air, following the faint scent of the child that had become his entire world. He had to find him. And he had no idea that what he would discover would change his life forever. The golden retriever wandered through the streets, his paws aching with each step. The scent of the boy lingered faintly, mixed with the countless other smells of the city. He followed it instinctively, drawn by an invisible thread that connected them. He had no plan, no real understanding of where he was going. All he knew was that he had to find the boy. Hours passed. The morning sun rose high, casting light on a neighborhood far from the alley where he had once lain forgotten. The houses here were small but full of life. Children playing, the scent of home-cooked meals drifting through open windows. It was nothing like the cold streets he had called home. And then, he saw him. The boy sat on the front steps of a modest brick house, his red raincoat folded neatly beside him. His face was pale, his small hands gripping the edge of the step. The moment the golden retriever laid eyes on him, his tail gave an involuntary wag. Relief surged through him, but something was wrong. The boy looked up, his eyes filled with an emotion the dog didn't understand. His lips trembled, and he whispered a word the dog couldn't comprehend. But he knew what it meant. Goodbye. A woman appeared in the doorway, his mother, her face lined with worry. She placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, speaking softly. The boy turned his head, reluctant, his eyes still fixed on the dog. Then, the door closed. The golden retriever stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't understand. Why was the boy leaving? Where was he going? He whimpered, scratching at the doorstep, but there was no response. The street, once so full of warmth, now felt as cold as the alley he had left behind. Then, a car engine roared to life. He turned his head just in time to see a small, blue car pulling out of the driveway. The boy sat in the back seat, his face pressed against the window, his hands raised as if reaching for something he could no longer hold on to. And just like that, he was gone. The dog chased after the car, his legs burning with effort. His breath came in ragged gasps, his weakened body screaming in protest. But the car moved too fast, and soon, it was nothing but a speck in the distance. He slowed to a stop, his chest heaving. He stood there, watching, hoping against hope that the boy would return. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was alone again. And this time, there was no one left to save him. Night fell, and the cold crept in once more. The golden retriever wandered the streets, but this time, his steps had no purpose. He was lost, truly lost, in a world that no longer made sense. But fate, as cruel as it was, had one more twist left for him. Because just when all hope seemed gone, a pair of footsteps approached from the darkness. A new presence, one that would change his life forever. But was it for better or for worse? The golden retriever stood frozen in the empty street, his paws trembling from exhaustion. His chest heaved, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he stared into the darkness where the boy's car had disappeared. The child, his only source of warmth and kindness, was gone. The loneliness he had felt before, the cold, aching void that had nearly consumed him, came rushing back tenfold. But just as he was about to turn away, a sound cut through the silence. Soft footsteps. Steady. Approaching. The dog tensed, his ears perking up. His body, though weak, instinctively prepared for fight or flight. He had learned the hard way that not all humans were kind. Then, from the shadows, a woman emerged. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that held the weight of experience. Her face was lined with both hardship and compassion, and as she gazed at the trembling golden retriever, something in her expression softened. "Oh, you poor thing," she murmured, kneeling slowly to his level. Her voice was calm, gentle, yet filled with something unfamiliar to him, understanding. The dog took a wary step back. Trust did not come easily, not anymore. The woman didn't reach for him. She simply sat on the curb, allowing the silence between them to settle. In her hand, she held a sandwich wrapped in paper. With careful movements, she unwrapped it, broke off a piece, and placed it on the ground between them. She didn't push, didn't coax. She only waited. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes as she watched the reunion unfold. She stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "You know him?" she asked softly. The boy nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "I never forgot him. I wanted to find him, but we had to move away. I thought I'd never see him again." Charlie licked the boy's face, his tail wagging uncontrollably. The ache in his heart, the emptiness he had carried for so long, finally disappeared. He was home. And this time, he would never be alone again. A new beginning. Eleanor spoke with the boy's parents, and after heartfelt discussions, an agreement was made. The boy would visit often, spending weekends and holidays with Charlie, ensuring they would never be separated again. Charlie now had two homes, two families, two people who loved him unconditionally. As he lay on Eleanor's porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, he felt something he hadn't in a long time. Peace. His journey had been long, painful, filled with loss and uncertainty. But in the end, he had found where he truly belonged. And for the first time in his life, he was truly, irrevocably happy.